Hey guys, what's up? Welcome to another episode of the Lab Podcast. This is like the 80th time we've recorded this. Anyways, today I have with me Kel, and I'm Cody if this is your first time here. But we're going to talk about mental health today. But first, Kel, how's it going?
Oh, it's going. I am just getting back from a whirlwind. I feel like I was on vacation last week, right after my show. So we're just getting back at it. And kind of falling back into the routine. A little rusty, but it's coming back. How are you doing?
Yeah, pretty good. I think it's just usual workout. Nothing too crazy. So, yeah, boring. Biggest thing is just figuring what the hell's wrong with my internet today, but hopefully we got it sorted. Tell us about your show. How did that go? How do you feel it now? How did it feel yet on stage? It was your first NPC show. Yeah. Fill us in.
So it's pretty cool because it was I get to knock off a bucket list item. Like at 36, that's pretty dope. I had a lifetime goal of getting on stage on the NPC stage, and I did it, and I didn't lose, which was awesome. But I kind of went into with the mindset of just getting on stage and making it through prep was the win. For me, it was pretty exciting. I was very nervous, but it all went really well. I'm really happy with how I did. I got 5th out of 6 in 2 classes, and then 3rd out of 4 in 1 class. So I'm stoked with that, and but I'm very excited to be eating again. I was so shredded. I've never been that lean in my whole life, so it was pretty crazy, but I'm excited to get a little bit of a not as lean.
Yeah. Prep is its own beast and its own it's a spiritual journey. You're just
a spiritual journey.
It really is. You see God.
It really is. It really is.
So how would you say your experience was different? This time, differences in shows, difference in experience. I'm just gonna interview on your show because.
Well, it was a lot different actually. Actually, it was really funny today. My time hop was all pictures from my first show, which was the trans show in Atlanta. Cody, of course, coached me through that one as well. But the pictures, we all had masks on, which was funny because it was not funny, I guess. But it was right after COVID, and we were still masking, and it was crazy. But this show, I went into it with a lot more anxiety, I would say. Just because I was doing the spray tan, and going up against a bunch of cis guys, so it was a little nerve-wracking. That was obviously the biggest difference, and these guys have been in their body forever and been able to just have a very different experience than what we have, and so it does feel a little different. You kind of have yes, everybody has the same goals, but our journeys here are very, very different. And I think reminding myself that it helped a lot of the anxiety. But overall, I think it was super exciting. This prep, I felt went a lot smoother because I knew kind of what to expect to a certain degree. Because it wasn't my first prep, but it was an eventful prep, and it really tested me. I feel
Yeah, it wasn't exactly as straightforward, I guess, as you would hope. We had some little hiccups, a little uncertainty at some points, wondering if we were gonna have to pull the plug. But we got it sorted out, luckily. So
Yeah.
it was just
Well, and I think
one little speed
even
bump.
more than like, and even more than just with like the speed bumps we like ran into with like the nitty gritty like logistics of just prep itself. Like I had a lot of crazy shit happen in my personal life during prep, which some was planned and some very much wasn't. And I think kind of meshing those two very heavy journeys together was just kind of crazy, but I feel like it made me incredibly mentally strong. And I really was stoked with a lot of the habits and thought processes and mindsets I came out of prep with. So I'm really happy with that, and I'm really happy with how my package I brought to stage. I thought I looked fantastic. I was really happy with how I looked, especially compared to the other guys too. And so I was pretty competitive in my classes, and I was happy.
Yeah.
Overall, good experience, but definitely some type 2 fun.
Yeah. And so how was your tanning experience? Because like go through what you might have done differently. I feel like there's probably some trans guys out there that are probably worried about the same thing potentially. So how did you navigate that?
So the tanning situation was probably the thing I was most worried about doing an NPC show. So for people who don't know, you have to do like a spray tan, like a bodybuilding professional spray tan. So when at least how it was set up at this show, it was at the hotel, and you kind of go into this big room, and they have 3 different tanning booths set up, and they're like half cut open, like shower curtains essentially. And then the girls call you, or the women call you back who are spray tanning you into the room, and there's like 7 or 8 other guys, and almost all the other guys just wear a sock over their junk. And I obviously could not do that because I do not have bottom surgery at all. And so I ended up wearing a thong that I got on Amazon with a packer in it, because you couldn't tell that, at least I didn't think you could tell very much, that it was not attached to my body. And I was definitely the only one with that on, but I don't think anybody really, I think they just thought I was a weird guy who likes my privacy, like, or something. I don't really think people had a lot of, like, no one seemed to give a fuck. And then you all have to stand there in front of your box fans tanning like 2 inches apart from each other. So it's a lot of closeness with naked men. For sure.
Yeah. And I feel like if anyone did seem to have a problem with that, they would seem like the weird one, because they'd be like, why aren't you naked, dude? And you're like, why do you care? Like,
right. Well,
I think that's
sorry, go ahead.
Thing. I was like, it's just weirder if someone pointed that out, you know?
Right. I the girl who was tanning me the first time, like for the first coat, she's like, do you want to keep these on? You're gonna have lines. And I'm like, yeah, I'm in physique, or I'm in classic. I don't really care about the lines because my trunks were gonna cover them anyways. Mm-hmm. But I did. She gave off good vibes because she was very heavily tattooed with pink hair. So I'm like, I kind of like leaned in, and I'm like, I'm also trans, and I just don't want to talk about this. Really, she's like, oh, people are just people, honey, and she's like, stand back. And I'm like, okay. So it went as smooth as it could have gone, I would say.
That's good. I'm glad that, you know, she didn't give you any hard time, and seemed like, you know, I feel like the spray tan people have seen so much that they're just like, meh, whatever. So they're generally good people. But I'm glad it went smooth, and it wasn't like your worst fears come true. I feel like those are what nightmares are made of, being naked in a room full of strangers.
Yes, absolutely. Well, and then like the funny thing is, because I was talking to the pro tan people, and I'm like, oh, where are you guys coming out from? And it was Springfield, Ohio, which happens to be in news right now.
Oh, gosh,
So
yeah.
I'm just like, it's just funny because it's Ohio. You never know like what kind of bag you're gonna get when you're talking to folks. So I thought that was funny also.
You're like, well, that's ironic. But yeah, so it's awesome. You know, things went well. You know, proud of you. And so what's next? You think you're gonna do it again? I mean, yeah. What's your thought process?
So right now, as per the deal with Maddie, it's wedding time. So this coming year is wedding time. I will obviously still be doing all my gym bullshit and still trying to grow and still trying to get bigger. But I'm not really thinking show yet. Gonna get wedding first. Actually tomorrow is a year from our wedding date. So that's exciting.
Nice.
But yeah, we'll see. I want to get bigger. I want to feel like I can be more competitive in classic before I get on stage and do another prep, just because it was really fucking hard on my body. And I'm still kind of like, feel like I'm not 100%. And obviously that's to be expected. It's only been a week and a half or whatever. But right now I just want to focus on getting bigger again and the wedding and being a human with that doesn't have to have like all of my priorities surrounding food and fitness. Yeah, that sounds about right. So yeah, the biggest thing, just getting bigger and seeing how things go. And you know, you're 12 months out from your wedding. You can just count it down like it was a show. 3 months out. Exactly. I switched it over to the countdowns. I had
You're
one
52
on my phone,
weeks
like
out.
a widget to competition day, and now I'm like, oh, I have another big event already to look forward to.
Oh, hey, well, at least you have that to look forward to in the meantime. Yeah, I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Do you have any like tips or anything that you would share for anyone who's thinking of competing?
Yeah, if you are thinking about competing, make sure you have a coach, first of all. I think people who are doing self-coaching for a prep, that, to me, I don't really see how that could work well, especially with how expensive bodybuilding is and how expensive it is to do a show. I would highly recommend taking it incredibly seriously and getting a coach and doing all that jazz. If you already have a show planned and are like on it, I would suggest working on posing immediately. That would be my number one tip. I wish I would have started sooner. Not that I regret anything, because I think I did a lot of work on my posing and it did get a lot better, but posing's freaking hard, and I don't feel like people think about it enough.
Yeah, it's like they say, there's been some arguments that, you know, bodybuilding isn't a sport because it doesn't require skill, but I feel like the posing actually requires skill and coordination, because you got to have that like mind muscle connection in order to really, you know, activate certain muscle or body parts. And yeah, no one thinks about it. They just think that you get up there and you're standing and stuff, but there's so much more behind it, and it can make a big difference. You know, it's like it can make or break a placing, if, you know, depending if you know how to kind of like present your physique in the best way, hide your weaknesses, present your strong points. So it's like a strategy. It's like if posing was a presidential election, it would be like the debate. You know,
I think that's pretty like good like metaphor for that, just because like also like you have to have it down, and you have to have it down quickly, because they move on stage, and it's like you don't have the setup time that you do when you're practicing in front of your tripod. And also like you have to have like a certain level of like stage presence, because like I kept like kept trying to elbow me out like of line and stuff, and like you kind of have to have your shit together really well to look good on stage. It's not just about getting through the prep if you want to do the bodybuilding part. I feel like so. Not that it doesn't count or anything, but it's just like the posing and the performance of it all is a lot more important than I think people. Because everybody just like kind of throws that together at the end. I feel like.
yeah, for sure. Posing for me too is something that I need to continue to work on. I did start pretty early last time, and it's like physique, and it should be simple, but it's just not. It's one thing to learn the poses and like be able to hit them, but then making it flow is a whole other thing. You know, like I made the mistake of posting something on Reddit, and someone was like, "You're posing, you pose like a drunken robot," and I'm like, "You're not wrong," you know, like, but I'm awkward. It's just I just don't know how to find that confidence on stage yet, and I think it's something that probably comes with age, like a fine wine, or like, you know, just like competitive age, not age, but yeah.
Yeah, pose and practice a lot.
Yeah. So what was your first post-show meal that you were just like stoked?
So I had, my friend made me a peanut butter chocolate Texas sheet cake, and they brought a slice to me right for like immediately after the show. So I had that was the first thing I ate. But we ended up going to my favorite pizza place, which I did regret. So
you did or didn't?
I would say I did. Yes, I wish I wouldn't have gone with anything fried, because like we also got appetizers, and I think that was our mistake. So.
Yeah, that sucks. You had a little bit of an unfortunate post-show time with something upsetting your stomach. So that's awful. Upside, silver lining, it helped prevent you from gaining 20 pounds in like 5 days. So
that's true. Well, I actually did, even when I was on vacation, I was pretty on point. I just got like seafood and other like in carbs. I did eat a lot of bread. I will say that, a lot of bread sandwiches, but mostly just grilled fish and bread products.
Yeah. I mean, night and day. I feel like from the last competition, I feel like everyone has, you know, their first competition mistakes that they make post competition. So it's like you got to learn.
I only gained 5 pounds over my whole vacation, which I think was pretty good.
No, that's excellent because a lot of it is glycogen, water stuff too. So that's great. So now we're reverse dieting. I can't speak. Reverse dieting you, and that's always a fun one because it's like you're still calculated, still structured, and you're still hungry kind of during it, and then you just want to eat everything because you're like, I'm not gonna eat on stage. I could just eat all of that, but it's just like then you gotta think. But I also don't want to like have a shit ton of fat to peel off. You know, got to prioritize the muscle gain. But yeah, so cool.
It also helps that I'm not working at a donut factory this time.
That is helpful. Oh, yeah, that would have been rough to come back to or during prep as well.
Because that's what happened. Remember, like last prep, I was working at my old job still, and I had access to a lot of donuts.
Yeah, that's helpful not to have access to all that currently. So far you're doing like 10 times better this time around.
Yeah, but it was a good time. Happy I did it. We'll see about just getting big.
Yeah,
that's what the goal is now.
Small, one step at a time. We'll see when we get there.
Yep.
What was that?
I said healthy and big.
Oh, yeah. I thought you said like healthy and bait. And I was like, what?
No.
Yeah. Anyways, so should we go over any current events? I feel like it's just political stuff and awful things right now.
Yeah, it's pretty much a bummer. I think what we can do is probably like just skip over. Okay, the world is a bummer right now, kind of. So
it is.
Let's focus on our mental health.
Yes. So which leads us to the topic, mental health. Sometimes for your mental health, you need to turn the news off
Yeah.
That's one tip.
I think right now is a time where we need to be very conscious of what we're bringing into our heads.
Yes,
especially because we just hit the autumn solstice, so the days are getting shorter again, and I know that's going to start affecting people. I know it started affecting, or I getting bummed out already about the darkness.
Yeah, I've definitely noticed it. Or I just get more anxious because I feel like it's later than it is.
Yeah.
Or I run out of time and I think like, oh, I'll go for a walk at this time, and then it's getting dark. I'm just like, shit, what happened? Like the other day I was at the gym, I had rode my boosted board and I forgot that it was getting dark earlier, and I had gone for a later workout and I had to like rush to get done so I could like ride back and not get hit by a car in the dark because I don't have any lights or reflective gear. So I was just like, I did not think about this. So it's happening. So that's part of the whole seasonal affective disorder, which is the big one for this time of year because there are shorter days and it's colder and, you know, not as much sunshine. So that can affect our serotonin levels and make us more depressed. Do you personally struggle with that?
I have in the past. I typically do after the holidays because usually in Ohio, then we enter the gray times where it's just overcast and gray for forever and cold. So sometimes, yeah, I get that, especially in January or so, like January, February. But right now, I fucking love October in Ohio because it's like the colors are crazy. It's all pumpkin-y, and that's good. But so the sad doesn't get me then. It's just the regular, normal sad that I take pills for.
Yeah. I'm like, I don't have seasonal depression. I have year round. No, I'm just kidding.
It's all the time. We keep that on the house.
Yeah, so seasons don't affect me. It's fine. I feel you because I feel like there's a certain amount of coziness that comes with the holidays, and it's more acceptable for it to be kind of darker, gloomy, or rainy, or cold because you just think about, you know, the coziness. But then once the holidays are done, you're like, there's no point to this anymore. Can we be done? And it's just like you said, just like gray and rainy, and you're over it at that point. So yeah, those are the months I tend to be affected by it more so. But trying to think of, so I'm trying to think of where we should go next with this. Do we have things to do
I have
for your
some
mental health?
stats I would love to
oh yeah, let's go for that.
To go for. So we're obviously talking about mental health, and Cody and I have both been pretty open with our struggles with mental health and that stuff. But the wonderful thing that at least that I've kind of noticed, and like I know me and you've talked about it before, is how much fitness and like kind of really focusing in on movement and taking care of yourself can help your mental health and really kind of boost you up when you need it the most. And I pulled a couple stats just to kind of show that. So there was a meta-analysis of 49 studies in the Psychiatry Journal in 2018 found that physical activity reduced depression symptoms by 17 to 41%. It showed that exercise can be a powerful intervention with people for mild to moderate depression. And that's a pretty significant impact, I would say. It's almost 17 to 41%. I mean, that's pretty major in my book to reduce depression symptoms. And I think that can be attributed to kind of a couple of different things, and one would be kind of just showing up for yourself. And I think putting care into yourself can usually help a lot of these mental illness like symptoms. Do you notice a big effect on your depression and stuff with working out?
Yeah, for sure. Definitely would end up being more depressed without the workout, just because it is a mood booster. You do get some endorphins from it, and you feel accomplished. And I think that's probably like the biggest thing, because I know it's like the less you do, or you just feel shit. The more you're out of your routine. And I think that's the hardest part about depression, is just like, it's like it tells you not to, you don't want to do anything, or nothing feels good, but it's only going to feel worse if you stop doing the things that your body needs, because our mind and body are connected. So we're meant to move, and when we're not moving, it's like, your brain knows, and it's like, hey, what are we doing? We need to do something. So definitely I notice it quite a bit.
Yeah, and then we can also kind of talk about how it can help, obviously, stress and anxiety and all that jazz. There's also another study found in 2020 that regular physical activity can lead to a 30% reduction in developing cognitive decline, which is kind of cool. So I know mental illness isn't really cognitive decline. That's more, we're talking about cognitive function and just kind of being sharp, a little less fuzzy. But I mean, the studies don't lie. And I know it can be really hard for people who are really in the downs of it, to even get up and get moving. Maybe should we talk about maybe a little bit of how you can kind of get over that hump of like the battle of the mental illness to get to the point where you can kind of take care of yourself?
Yeah, for sure.
So what would be your kind of number one thing that you go to if you're just having like a really shitty day, you're really down, you're really not wanting to go to the gym? What are your kind of go-tos?
I think I generally just tell myself I'll feel better afterwards. And, I have both anxiety and depression a lot of the time. So I kind of have to weigh, which one's going to be louder. If I don't go, or, something along those lines. But I think just sticking to my routine and just knowing myself and what makes it worse. And I think, awareness is probably key in what's going to work best for anyone else. We're all different. So maybe like the gym isn't your thing, but maybe just walking, or your dog, or some sort of activity, that's your thing, then sweet. And obviously I think support, but if you have accountability, coach obviously is going to be helpful. You're much more likely to do the things you need to do to take care of yourself if someone is holding you accountable for that. So even if it's not a coach, spouse, friend, whatever. And I think those like the main things that generally pop into my head that are the most helpful for me. But how about you?
One thing I've been really liking the idea of is thinking more about if you're really struggling with depression and you're really having a hard time getting out of bed, having a hard time taking care of yourself, really only doing the bare minimum, it can be really overwhelming to think about going to the gym. Even when you're having mental health crises and it's going to help you get better. One thing I've been suggesting to people is like thinking about it at a sliding scale. So if you can't go to the gym, you can do a little body weight movement practice for 15 minutes at home, or maybe you can do some stretching or go on a walk, and thinking about it as kind of, what do I have the capacity for today, and as opposed to being in that all or nothing. I think having these like smaller goals and the ability to lessen your goal as you're on the fly can be really helpful. Also, if you have the support, asking folks, kind of reaching out to say, hey, can you want to meet up for a walk, or to have someone hold you accountable with a friend, maybe, or and it's similar to the support idea that you had, is just kind of reaching out to get movement in some way. Maybe a hike, maybe a doggy play date, so at least you're standing up and outside. Or maybe your friend can walk with you to the gym, something like that. Or go get a healthy smoothie or something.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I do also want to mention, like, we're describing what, pretty typical depression might look like, but there's also people who are like high functioning. So there's like high functioning depression. And if I'm honest, like that would be more of my type. So for those of you who are like high functioning depression, you might actually need to prioritize resting or doing something fun. Because if you just like kind of keep running yourself into the ground, that's also not gonna help, and your recovery is not gonna be great either if you're stressed and depressed. So you just kind of have to be aware of if you are doing too much. There is such a thing as like on the opposite side of the spectrum. I think a lot of people get confused as to being like, like, how are you depressed? You work out every day, you eat right, and it's just, things just affect people differently. So it's just like depression doesn't really look one way, which is why it's individual. So some people, you might need encouragement to move. Some others might need encouragement to rest and not just keep going a million miles a minute.
Absolutely. Burn yourself out even more.
Yeah.
For sure. So, do we have anything else that we want to talk about here? Where
we were prepared, aren't we? Well, I mean, I think if I just go into like the personal side of things, I've always preached that like mental health is, important, and it's always been something that I've prioritized as a talking point. But I feel like after, this year I had like an incredibly stressful year, and it just like pushed me to the edge, and like you kind of learn a lot about yourself in those moments. But the most thing that I've learned is just like how your mental health is like the foundation of everything, and you can't have health without mental health. And it's always a second thought. We always think it's disconnected from our health. So it's like, even if it's not, wintertime, or we're not trying to mitigate the effects of seasonal depression, just like having a checklist at all times just to kind of, keep yourself in line. And if it's something that you kind of struggle with in and out of, just knowing, when you're starting to take a down slope, or, when your anxiety is heightened, and asking for help when you need. And I think that's like probably the next thing of like, don't be afraid to ask for help, go to therapy. Like there's all sorts of different things they can do now to kind of help you out. But yeah, without getting into too much detail, but yeah, how about like personally for you, do you struggle with it kind of intermittently? Is it just seasonal? And can you feel like if you're starting to get depressed, and like, do you kind of create like a game plan to kind of like push it off? Or are you someone who like doesn't realize it until you're in it and you're just like, oh shit, like I'm drowning?
Yeah. I think I'm someone who, so I've like struggled with depression since I was very young, and it's been a lot better as of recently. But I would say I have been a lot better about seeing the warning signs before it gets too bad. I also have my therapist is very cool, and I am able to just like kind of email him whenever I can like start seeing warning signs, and I'm like, hey, it's time for me to get back on your schedule. And I usually just jump back in with him, and that it works for us. But there's kind of like a really familiar pattern that I get into when I know I'm going down the wrong path, or down just warning signs, I would say. And I'm able to either pull back a little and ask for help and kind of get that support I need, or at least know that that's where I'm going, so I can try to bolster up a lot of the cup filling activities to kind of offset that depression. So when I meet kind of what you were describing again with high functioning depression, the making sure that I'm doing things for me to kind of avoid that burnout scenario. So taking a little bit more time for myself, doing things that I enjoy, blocking off time to make sure that I'm feeling connected and grounded into the community and that sort of thing. So I have been able to kind of see those warning signs. And I think, again, like what you were saying with knowing yourself and kind of being able to figure out where you need to go and kind of it really sucks because you have to learn it almost from experience, and the experience just really fucking sucks.
I know. That's what I'm saying. I'm like, I learned a lot about myself this year, that's for sure. Because I feel like, you know, I am someone who's kind of gone up and down, but not great at recognizing like the signs or whatever. So I have a new kind of awareness now, but before I was just like fine until I wasn't, I guess, you know. And you're just like, ah, shit. Yeah, so unfortunately learning from experience is like the only way you can really get to know yourself and have awareness with it. But should we go over like any sort of treatment options with depression? I think there's still so much stigma around, you know, treatment, therapy, medications, that sort of thing. I mean, there's obviously natural treatments. You know, you got like light therapy and exercise, like you mentioned, and meditation and all those cringy things like yoga and mindfulness.
Yeah, well, and I think that's important though, because I do think the stigma around these like self-helpier type or more woo-woo type treatment options, but the world, I feel like, especially for folks like us, is just really fucking scary right now, and we're such a target for this stuff. I think trying to understand that stigma of the treatment and really putting it into practice with like your full chest, because I know a lot of folks, when like they don't really trust that like meditation or mindfulness or gratitude is going to help them, they like half-ass it to the point where like, well, no, it's not going to help you if you're not trying, and like it's not going to help if you don't change and you don't work at it, because these are things that you have to practice. And I think that is another issue with treatment of mental illness, is that people think that it's going to be like getting the clap. You can take a pill and it's going to go away, and it's not like that with this, you know what I mean?
Oh, that was a great example. Yeah, and I feel like that is the hard part too with depression, is like so many different things. Like people are just so different. Brain chemistry is different. Different things work, you know, for different people. You know, like no shame here. I've definitely tried some, you know, medication for that and anxiety. I just didn't do very well with it. I feel like I always get all the worst side effects. So that didn't go great, but luckily, you know, there are some other treatments now. I've tried ketamine, and the latest is TMS. And so still kind of figuring how that has been working for me. I do think it has helped a bit. It's weird and not many people know about it currently, but they're coming up with new things to treat depression these days. So I think we just still know so little about the brain. I was talking to Des the other day how sometimes the hard part about like psychiatry or just mental health in general is you feel like they're just throwing shit at you to see if it sticks. and you're kind of experimental in a way, not to where like, oh, these drugs might be harmful. It's just like your metabolism, your brain chemistry is unique, like a fingerprint, and we don't know how these drugs are going to work with you, so they just kind of keep throwing things at you. And I know there's like DNA tests now, which I did take, but according to these DNA tests, I should be fine with any SSRIs. And I'm like, cool, but what is like okay? What is the definition of, yeah, these will work for you? Because it certainly did not. But yeah, I don't know where I'm going with that.
Yeah, but it is different for everybody, and there's so much to try, and there's like such a range of treatment options. Like, because yes, you can do the pills, and sometimes they help, but you don't know. I think a lot of focus needs to be kind of I don't know to say that.
Like, never mind.
Never mind. But I do think that the like kind of the array of treatments is kind of crazy that we have nowadays, and that are so many. And I haven't tried. I've only done like talk therapy and a lot of pills. Not all at the same time, but like, but a lot of different medications for depression and anxiety and all of that. But I was lucky and was able to find one that I've not had issues with, and I've been on it for a long, long time. But that's not fun either, because I'm like, am I ever going to be able to get off this? And who knows?
Yeah, and maybe not. If it's not broken, don't fix it, kind of thing. Yeah, and I feel like anxiety and depression are so like they're best friends. Usually they kind of dance together. So I feel like if anyone struggles with depression, chances are you probably also have anxiety. And a lot of these medications, it's hard to figure out like which one's going to treat which one better. How do we mitigate side effects? Maybe you don't want medications that will promote weight gain or something along those lines, especially if you're like on a fitness journey. But have you ever, so there's this like PBS documentary it was Amazon Prime. I watched it. I think there's like an actual like PBS channel, and it was all about mental health. It was actually very interesting because they went through the history of basically like psychiatry, and holy fuck, like the shit that they used to do is terrifying. So sometimes I'm just like, how do we know this isn't like the same thing, only now we're just getting lobotomies and that sort of thing. She's like, damn, they used to give out lobotomies like they give out Adderall these days, so I'm just like, it's hard to trust because we still don't know very much. I'm not saying that you can't trust it, but as someone who's like been trying to like use the system this year, it's hard to navigate and make the decisions of what you think is going to be right for you, because it's just it's hard with psychiatrists sometimes too, especially if they don't like ask you questions. They are just prescribing you stuff, and you're like, do you know why you're prescribing me this? Like what is your reasoning behind it? And it's like we still have so much work to do, even within the realm of like healthcare and mental health. I think it's still just thought of as like this afterthought, and I mean, it is still thought of as an afterthought in society because I was also talking to Des the other day. It's just like, if you say that you have depression, anxiety, OCD, whatever, like people are like, okay, cool, but they expect you to like live through society as normal. As far if this is like a physical ailment, you had a broken leg, you had cancer, whatever, they would offer you help and they would make accommodations for you. But for some reason, like people are so unwilling to make accommodations for someone who has a mental illness, and it's not any different. It's just as debilitating, but people can't see it. Or people get weird when they start to like see it in you. And it's like, okay, you can talk about it all you want, but don't let me see that shit, because it's uncomfortable or whatever. So it's like we can talk about it a lot now. I feel like the stigma has really kind of gone down as far as conversation goes, but there's still so much around actual, like, acknowledging that it's real, I think.
Well, and it's real and that it matters and it's not your fault. And because I think that's like with mental illness, when people ask for accommodations or understanding, I feel like you're still looked at as like, well, this is just something that's your fault and you're weak, and it's so certainly not true. It is an illness just like anything else, and should be treated as such, as opposed to like, well, get your shit together because you're not being productive.
Yeah.
Which is bullshit because sometimes I feel like even more debilitating than you can work with a broken leg, so they're like, whatever, keep going. And with depression, when you can't get out of bed, or when you are so overwhelmed and maybe need to take a step back at work, or maybe just a little understanding or a mental health day, people are like, oh, you're just skipping. And I agree that it's just because you can't see it.
Yeah.
And it just the stigma. And I remember that it was going around a different podcast I listened to. They were doing show me your pills, and it was like everybody was tagging them taking their like medication, and I'm like, that's great. Like it is cool to take care of yourself and understand that it isn't your fault, and that you can just get the help you need, and that's okay. And I do think that awareness can help, and especially in these times, like, how many times have we been told just since we were growing up that these are unprecedented times, or first in a millennia, or you know what I mean? Like, these are the world that we're living in, and like, and I know me and you are on like more of a public platform, but people on the internet telling us that we should kill ourselves at least once a week, that's not a cool way to live. Like, it's not something that's fun to deal with. Like,
no.
And I think a lot of understanding what you're bringing into your brain, that's like, for me, for example, like, I know that I'm going into this like dark time, like that my seasonal depression is going to kick in January. So in January, I turn off all my notifications on my apps, like for news, for like, because I can't bring in more bad. I really need to control what's kind of being inputted. So the way I kind of think about it is, when I can see my warning signs, I need to start eating more veggies. It's kind of like a metaphor, right? So like, I need to, like, when you're losing weight or you want to lose fat, you are really starting to think about your intake. What am I eating? What am I getting out of it? What am I pushing out of my body right now? And I kind of try to do the same thought process with when I know my mental illnesses are kicking up or I'm having more symptoms. Let's look at what I'm bringing into my head. Is this going to make it better or worse? So I will stop responding to those trolls on the internet. I will not give them the time of day. I will not work through or see those family members that I know are going to trigger me more, and kind of protect myself with a little bit more boundaries. And so I try to think of it in the same sense of, if I had a goal to lose weight, this is what I would do. Well, what kind of things can I do to help my mental illness in the same sense? And so that's something that's been really helpful for me, especially recently with how much trans hate there is, with politics. That has been really helpful for me, is just kind of being aware of what is in my head as my soundtrack. What am I listening to all damn day?
Yeah, no, that's a really good tip. What we are intaking always makes a difference, whether it's food or information. Just like you'd probably be quite depressed if you were watching like, puppies dying all day long. Like, obviously that's
it's like the same. No trans person like would want to watch Fox News to hear him
demonize stuff all the time, right?
Yeah.
So you wouldn't do it. So why go on? Why read the comments? You know what I mean? Go down at the bottom of the article. You know, we all have that like curiosity. Oh, wonder what everybody's saying, and then you just go and you read all the disgusting shit that people are saying on the internet, and maybe you don't need to read right now. You know what I mean? And like things like that. And it's just something to think about when you're trying to protect yourself and protect your head.
Yeah, and like. Sometimes you're doing better than other times, and if you want to go fight in the comments, go at it. But if you're feeling vulnerable, probably not the best idea.
Right, exactly. And it's just knowing yourself, reading yourself, and keeping tabs on what choices you are making, if those are good choices for you or bad choices for you.
Yeah, I feel like there's like sometimes I think about. Say you're feeling not great, or either you're anxious or you're depressed, having like a care routine. What is it that you could do that's like simple, that brings you joy? So say you're having a bad day, and or like for me, what I like to do is like, I'm weird. I love watching like a random ass documentary, whether it's about cults or aliens, like anything, because it takes my mind off of everything, and I like to think about like, whoa, like the possibility, you know, instead of thinking about like my own bullshit. So it's like a good distraction, with like a good meal and a documentary, or spending time with Des and just watching something stupid, or laughing our asses off about random shit. Just things that you could do to like kind of lighten the feeling, not necessarily like complete distraction, but sometimes distractions aren't the worst thing, but just something to kind of boost your mood or get you away from ruminating on things a bit, I guess.
And to go kind of a step further with your list idea is like, print that baby out and put that somewhere like on your fridge, like have it handy. And like somewhere where you're gonna notice it, because I do think like setting yourself up in your environment and to like take care of yourself is also something that can be helpful. So to have it in front of your face.
yeah, and when I think about my conversations, like with my therapist, I'm feeling down or whatever, she'll ask me, like, what can you do today, kind of to take your mind off of it. But then also, I don't know where it's going from now. It's like totally just lost my train of thought. My Adderall just wore off completely. I woke up way too early today. I'm like, I was good when we were supposed to like originally record this. Now I'm like, whoa. But like, okay, so another thing is just knowing. I don't know, like you can use tools to like, no shame, I take Delta 8 gummies like at night, and nights are generally the hardest for me, and it kind of just lightens things a bit. And I know relying on substances or whatever is not always like the best thing to do, but sometimes when you're like, it's basically like it's just a tool, whether that's Delta 8 gummy or Ativan or Xanax or whatever. At least we do have these tools to help us. There was definitely another piece of this that I was going to say, but it just straight out. So maybe next time.
Okay, that's okay.
I'll remember at some point, and it'll be an inappropriate time to say it.
But they can even like, you can do like coping strategies are always great, and to have some on hand that work for you. Like I just got a new adult coloring book, which I enjoy a lot. It's mindless, but is enough to keep my hands busy and keep my mind off things. And you can just kind of explore those ideas and those kind of things. Not all of them are going to work for you. Some people hate journaling, but some people love it. Some people, like, you just kind of have to kind of do what the psychiatrists do and just throw a bunch of different coping strategies on the wall and see what sticks.
Yep, pretty much. Yeah, and I do love journaling. Are you a journal person?
I am on and off. It depends. I actually have on my list to get a new journal tomorrow. So,
Are you you're like a handwritten journal versus
I'm
like
a handwritten guy.
I
Dude,
figured.
you know, I just got rid of a paper calendar last year.
I know. It's like, yeah, that would make sense.
I write all my workouts out on paper.
Okay, yep, that makes sense. Like, I used to be a handwrite journal type of guy, but then I feel like once I was out of school, my hand muscles just forgot how to write. I'm like, I can write, but it's so messy, and my hand gets tired, and so I just want to stop even before like my brain's ready. So then now I'm just doing the digital journals. Shout out to Day One. There's an app called Day One. I don't know if it's Mac specifically, but it's really good because it, formats. You can format however you like, and you can add photos and like make it your own. But it is a good little app to remind you to journal and stuff like that. I also just remembered the thought I was thinking about. There's a few things my therapist says to me, and that was, what can you do tonight to kind of relieve the stress or whatever. And she likes to say, I need to be more gentle or kind with myself, and how can I do that? And that always makes me cringe because I'm just like, what does that even fucking mean? Like, be more kind to myself. And I think we all probably have our own definition. So like, being kind to myself might just be like being okay with whatever I got done in the day and not thinking about things I should have done. Or, being kind to yourself can be simply actually making sure you're eating a nutritious meal. Because being kind isn't always just, like binging on junk food. And like, I think we get those things confused a lot as like, be gentle with yourself, be kind with yourself. Like, what does that truly mean? And I always feel like kindness is the simplest way you can take care of yourself without beating yourself up in your head mentally.
Yeah, I know one thing that Maddie noticed towards the end of my prep, and that I've been trying to get out of the habit of, is I've been like, oh, that was so stupid of me. Why did I do that? Or calling myself like a dummy, or like something, like calling myself names and shit, and like out loud when I forget or make mistakes or something. And she's like, don't call yourself a dummy. You're not a fucking dummy. You just made a mistake. And that's like one kind of instance I would say that like I need to remember to be kind to myself, because I just made a mistake. Humans make mistakes. I don't need to call myself dumb. Or like something more X-rated that I probably said, like fucking idiot or something. And I think that's an example, because that's something that you're internalizing. Like, I'm not dumb. I just made a mistake, and all humans make mistakes. And talking to yourself like that isn't gonna make you feel better when you constantly are telling yourself that you're stupid. Or that so that can be simply changing that to, Maddie told me I should call myself goofball when I want to say I'm a dummy, because a goofball isn't necessarily that bad, but calling myself an idiot is not as good. So like something simple like that can be helpful. It's not going to cure everything, but all these little things do add up. And so I think that's one thing that people like, yeah, I'm probably always going to have struggles with depression, but it's learning how to move through those struggles and in minimizing the time in them. That's going to be the key. And it's these small decisions that kind of add up to that.
Yeah, for sure. I think another thing we tend to skip too is learning how to be okay with feeling what you're feeling, because we try to like cover it up so much. Kind of goes against what I said about, numbing out with a gummy. But I mean, like, all the time, sometimes you need a break. Yeah. But it's just like, I think a lot of times we're scared of the things that we're feeling, and that in itself can cause anxiety and depression. So I don't even know what that even really means, because I know that I've caught myself feeling anxious about something or feeling down about something and almost beating myself up for feeling it. And so I think, being okay with feeling a certain way just means like giving yourself permission to feel those things and not necessarily like try to get them away immediately. It's like you can acknowledge them, accept that that's what you're feeling, and then, kind of move on or do whatever you need to do regarding what those feelings even mean to you. But I think we're so quick to try to push them away or beat ourselves up for even feeling, anything. And I think that can also lead to depression because you're just stuffing shit down. And in turn, if you're stuffing it down, you're not able to actually talk about it or even know what's going on or ask someone for help. And so it's just like, I think journaling definitely helps there. So you can just brain dump and get it all out. And that's helpful for therapy sessions. It's hard if you get into a therapy session and you feel like you are emotionally constipated. I've done many times, and I'm just like, I don't know what's wrong with me. Like the feelings maybe 3 days just come rushing at you, and you're like, shit, this is what like I was stuffing down. But I think just it's almost like a practice of learning how to just sit with your feelings and not take action in some sort of way depending on what those feelings are telling you.
Yeah, I read this, or it was probably on a TikTok, let's not lie, thing that was like your emotions and your feelings are kind of like the lights on your dashboard. So like when your oil needs changed, your little light comes on, and it's just a light. It's just information that you have that something needs fixed or is amiss or whatever, and you can just turn it off and get that notification away, but that doesn't change the fact that you still need to change your fucking oil.
Yeah.
And so it's something that I agree with you. Like those uncomfortable moments are necessary. We have to feel them. They're not going to go away if you don't feel it and deal with it. Yeah, for sure. I think that's part of processing them. Whatever is behind those feelings. Like if you don't process them, life will force you to at some point. And it's never fun to be in that position where you're just like forced to face shit. I feel like that was my whole year. So it's just like you don't want to get to that point where you don't have a choice, of feeling what you're feeling, where navigating a lot of things at once. So it's just like try to open yourself up a little bit. It's uncomfortable, but it's going to be a lot more comfortable than if you just shove it down and hold it in until you can't, and then your crazy just comes out and scares you and everyone else. Yeah, absolutely. So should we go to the power talk? Do you have anything else that you?
Yeah, I don't think so. So yeah, sounds good. Power talk.
Today I have a little one, and it's a little quote that I like, that I've heard before, and I'm sure everybody has heard it at one point or another. Success is the sum of small efforts repeated day in and day out. And I really was falling in love with the thought of small goals, small steps at the end of prep. And this quote I saw, I don't know, like 2 or 3 weeks out from the show, and I stuck with it, and because I think that is sometimes what really gets at people, is that they think too big of chunks. And like when I was towards the end of prep, and that's its own beast, of course, but I think there's a lot of parallels to dealing with mental illness to prep. And I was just towards the end, I was only thinking 2 hours ahead of time. That's it. Because like I couldn't fathom more than that, because I was just at the edge, and making those smaller chunks, smaller steps, and just being able to focus there is what helps you keep going. Because if you're too scared to move, you're not going to make any progress, right? So if you can even move an inch, at least you're moving. And if you can keep doing that, you can move 12 inches in 12 days. That's awesome. And I think it's just thinking of small things in smaller chunks of time and just keep going. Keep doing it over and over again. So that was the power talk I had for today. I know it's not super powerful, but I think thinking small can be powerful if you keep going and keep doing it.
No, honestly, I feel like it's a really good one because I agree with you, and it's even a good reminder for me. You know, like speaking of mental health, I'm just now starting to talk about, like, I got diagnosed with OCD. I kind of like wanted to just hold on to that for a bit, but it's been a couple months now. And I feel like I've been so open about anxiety because I've just had it for so long. Yeah. But apparently it's more than that. It's actually it's OCD. And I'm like, oh, okay, it makes sense now. But part of that tying into the small steps, it's like I have to remind myself, because so I'm doing ERP, which is exposure therapy. It's exposure response prevention. So you take small steps towards like what your fears are. A big one for me is socially. And so just to be completely transparent, my assignment for this week was to go to a coffee shop to work. Like, that's how small. And like, that was a big step for me. Like, that was an achievement. And there was a moment where I felt proud of myself. And then there was a moment where I was like, holy fuck, like, I'm celebrating going to a coffee shop. Like, that's bullshit. And so, you know, it's a good reminder that, you know, going to the coffee shop today could mean like public speaking in 5 years. You know, you just got to take it one step at a time. And you can get ahead of yourself, and you can get down if you think too far ahead.
Well, there's no point in pushing, because it's just going to stop your progress if you think down on yourself. So even the small steps, those small victories, that is what makes the big victories. It's nothing can happen. Like, that's why prep is so long, right? Because nothing can happen quickly to get you there to that big victory. It has to be these small things that just keep going, and you just have to make them consistent, because that is what we know. Everything, that's how anything that's worth having is gotten. It's by small things over and over and over again. That's what we know, and that it's the same with everything. Exactly.
Literally, like when
mental health, fitness, food.
Progressive overload in all aspects of life. It doesn't just apply to gaining muscle. It applies to any sort of progress. And for some reason, like, maybe, I don't know, I consider, like, I'm very patient with the bodybuilding stuff and, you know, doing the work. And I mean, I'm not patient, but I'm forced to be. It's like, you want the results, so you do it, because there's no other way. But with other things, you know, like mentally or whatever, it's just like, I expect myself to just be there. And it's so ass backwards. It's like, why would it be any different, you know, for this other thing? It's really not. So, yeah,
absolutely. Progressive overload in life. That's all.
Yes, exactly.
What a great note to end on.
Yes.
All right. Well, until next time, listeners and Cody, we will talk to you next week. And
yes.
Adios.
Peace.